What, are you live?
Hello, hello. Yes, I'm showing him the claybord. Hello, hello.
Why?
You got the claybord out?
Yeah.
Okay. Here, let me show people your fun parts too.
Oh, there's a lot of sculptures from various people that I know.
Sculpture, skulls.
Do some things.
Do some things. Yes, he will do some things.
I will do a thing.
I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention to what they were saying. Sorry,
this
guys.
This is an ampersand claybord, an 8x10. And people were always talking about the graphite wash process that I do. So basically, this is graphite powder in a box, right?
Yep.
And just water. I get a sponge a little bit wet, and sometimes I'll use a brush too, and kind of load it up with a bit of graphite and start kind of playing with it on the claybord.
This is how the recent ones start.
Yeah.
All right.
Any of the graphite wash pieces, this is pretty much what I've been doing. And you know, this is so early on, it's hard to tell what's going to last by the time I get to the end of it, because it dries and then you polish it a bit and it gets kind of mostly gray, and then you work back and forth into it with more sponges and erasers and
Everything.
Pencils and everything else. So
there's a series of 15 waves.
Basically. And almost always I end up with something different than what I start with. And I use brushes mostly for like striations and things. And essentially this is just to get a background that I can start to see images in and start and pull things out of. Like, it's like pretty much my entire process is a Rorschach test. I get it to here, and it's going to get loud for a second because to speed things up I have a nice heat gun.
If you guys have any questions, you can holler. I'll try to answer them if you can.
Can you see it with pretty good detail?
Watching this is better than cleaning my house too, Amy. Oh, it's Amy. Hi, Amy. Amy from IX.
Oh, cool. So the graphite is really dark, and then when it dries, it gets matte and grays out a bit. And then after that is when I start kind of burnishing it with like a cotton towel, just so that it makes some more, like there's some really kind of little cool stuff in there that I have no idea if it'll stay. But for this particular thing we're doing here, I'm probably going to let it stay pretty as lighter than normal, just so people can see what I'm doing. So,
is the graphite powder toxic in any way?
No, it's graphite and clay, and I actually called the CDC once because my daughter ate some of it. And
they're poison control. That's right.
I mean Poison Control Center,
yes.
Not CDC, but the Poison Control Center said it's only really toxic if you like inhale a lot of it, and you can get like pneumonia from it. But she ate like a spoonful of it, and they said it wouldn't hurt her at all.
And the orientation may be vertical, it may be horizontal.
Yeah, I have no idea yet. But okay, so now you can see it's kind of dull. When you look at it, there's really no shine to it at all. But most of what you see here will probably fall off of the board once I start polishing it, and then I'll end up with kind of a nice background to play with. But see, you start to.
Yeah, and that was just water that he put with the graphite.
Yeah, just water. You can see that it comes off, right? And it becomes grayer and less contrasty. But by the time I'm done, a lot of the contrast will come back because I'll work back into it a lot. Now, I get it to a point where I've polished it so much that it won't even come off on your hands anymore. And at that point, you can really work into it with like erasers and pencil. And it's just basically making yourself a really nice textural background to draw into and to reduce, to pull from. See, already there's not much graphite coming off anymore.
Yeah.
And it's starting to get reflective. shiny. And for these pieces, the small claybord ones, I really enjoy the shiny stuff. I'm going to grab one of those over there real quick. Don't go anywhere. I'll show you what it looks like once it's finished. Once it's finished, and then I use a clear coat on it, it looks like this. And you can kind of see the surface is almost like glass.
Oh, that's cool.
And this is done exactly the same way as this. And then I find a shape, or I start with a shape I want to play with. And I basically just argue with the claybord until we come to a disagreement and decide to agree to disagree. And I'll end up with half of what I want and half of what the board will let me do. So
that's what you finished the other day?
Yeah, this one. And you can see the surface is glossy. And that's just an acrylic clear coat. It goes on top of it. But it doesn't, you can't really hurt it anymore after that. So
that's cool.
Yeah, I'll leave this up here.
There's some nice noodly parts to that.
Yeah. So
how do you get it to the black areas?
That's when you work back into it with oil.
Well, I mean beforehand though, in the one girl.
So here's one that I did. I actually made a piece. This is actually paper clay and gesso that I laid out. I made and then sanded down and polished, and then worked on top of doing the same technique that you saw here. And then I'll pull things out with a sharp abrasive eraser. And then the really black parts are where I work back into it with oil.
On top.
On top, yeah.
Once it's sealed, right?
Yeah, what happened was I first sealed it with a spray matte medium, so it was dull. And then I started fiddling with the lines a bit. And then I put a gloss medium on top of that.
Okay.
I think it was clear coat. And with this particular surface, it still remained a little bit porous. So you can see the surface isn't quite as shiny as the other, but it's still pretty glossy. But it actually takes pencil or black pencil or oil or anything. And it's pretty much isolated from any kind of destruction of any of the paper parts of the paper clay. Because it's also mixed with gesso, which is a plastic, like the acrylic gesso, which is plastic.
Right, right. There's some nice cracks in this one down here.
Yeah. You can see like little bits and pieces here where this would be really easy to pick out and make a shape out of. And it might suggest something else entirely. I do this quite a bit too. I'll spin them. Unless I have a definite idea of something that I want to work on, like the other piece, which we're not showing yet.
Right, we're not going to show.
I had a distinct idea. And so with that, you sort of have to plan a little bit as to where you're going to lay the darks and the lights in.
Right. And this, how long does it take him to finish a piece? It depends. Sometimes, a smaller one will be overnight.
One that is less frustrating, I can do in a day.
Right.
Some of the more frustrating ones where I end up fighting with it for a while can be upwards of anywhere from 3 days to a week. But this I did in a couple hours,
That's really cool.
Yeah. And this actually has a lot of drawing in it, but the actual movement of the graphite on the board suggested the shape, and it's sort of like an amalgamation of a goat and a cow skull with some horns and ears and stuff. So.
Yeah, he doesn't use the charcoal. He likes the graphite powder.
It's not that I have anything against charcoal. It's just that I've just always used the graphite powder. I know charcoal can get really super matte black, and so at some point I might try playing with that too, or even mixing it with the graphite.
This one, this 8x10 is a claybord, the ampersand claybord. The small round one, he made a paper clay over.
So that's what you're looking at down here. And this is actually I use the clay that they use to make dolls. It's like LA doll clay or LA clay, but it's paper clay or stone clay, and it air dries, and it can be formed and sanded. But I also added on top of it some acrylic gesso, and it mixed with the surface of the clay, of the paper clay, so it came up with kind of this really kind of neat combination of smooth and textured surface to draw on. So I'm gonna have fun doing this again, I think.
That'll be cool.
Yeah.
All right, are you going to work back into this with more powdered graphite?
One of the things that I sometimes will do, and this is usually where things start messing up really bad.
This is a different sponge. Look, you have...
So I have different kinds of sponges for different sorts of textures and stuff. And this, as black as it is right now, is one of those white Mr. Clean Magic erasers. And if you dip it in a little bit of water and squeeze it out, you can carve whites back into the thing. And if I want to, look, I can go all the way back to pure white with it. And it'll take it... You just have to work with it, and then this will dry, and that little bit of gray there will just come off with a kneaded eraser if I want it to. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing you can use to take off and to draw back into it, or you can use it just like a scratch board. You can use steel wool or pens like needles or any of the scratch board tools. Mm-hmm. You know, an X-Acto. That's what I have these things for. Just a regular X-Acto, and you can actually scratch little details back into it. And I have I just got this steel desk for Christmas, and you might notice all these little silver things all over it. And those are magnets. I like bulk buy magnets just because everything I have, I just stick them on magnets. So I'm probably like creating an electrical wave field in here with all these magnets. But I don't know.
Don't walk through with the computer.
Making a Faraday cage out of my studio.
So someone asked how long it took. The one that we aren't showing, the 8x10, I really like the 8x10 that you just finished.
Yeah, that's actually, it was an iteration meant to be sort of an in-depth study for a larger piece.
Yes.
And so when I get the other piece done, I'll show the smaller one. But one of the things I want to point out is...
It took you a couple of...
That one?
It took you a couple of days, though, because you were...
Yeah, I worked on it probably for 4 days. Mm-hmm. One of the things that's interesting about the graphite, and sometimes it's tragic, because you can get it really wet, and it'll do this really beautiful beading that happens. And these like little rivulets that look like like in there, you can see it starts to turn into almost little like a landscape. Mm-hmm. But once you start, you have to be very gentle if polishing it out, or else that'll just go away.
Right.
So once it dries, I usually take a soft brush and brush off all the loose graphite, like one of these, and brush off all the loose graphite, and then I can polish it, and then I'll have to pick it back out with a pencil or something else to bring the detail back out.
Right. And this, if you blow it dry too, you got to watch because you'll blow it around. It'll move, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. If it's wet and I put the hairdryer on it, it'll push all of the all the graphite to one side or the other.
Right.
It's always better to let this kind of stuff dry on its own, if you can manage to, resist the impulse to just start.
Right.
Which I don't sometimes do. But yeah, actually, I saw somebody say something about using the maple things, and I did make a gessoed piece of board that went up on my Everyday Original, the last one, and it works the same way. The graphite, the wet graphite, responds a little bit differently to the claybord than it does the gesso. The gesso is a little more absorbent, so it's a little fractionally harder to remove the graphite when you're picking stuff out.
Right.
It just means it's a little harder, that's all. Doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. It just means just know that it'll be a little bit harder.
Experiment and play.
Yeah. So here's another thing. Don't move. I'll get the other one.
All right. Would any kind of eraser work? Kneaded erasers work?
Kneaded erasers work for gentle and soft stuff. And then there's pencil erasers. Here, I'll get one of those too and show you.
They're Faber-Castell Perfections.
Yeah.
And they're a hard abrasive eraser.
So they're abrasive erasers, and they're like these. This is an antique one, but you can still get these from regular Faber-Castell online. So it has a white side, and you sharpen it, and it can make a fine point. Also, electric erasers work really well. And this is what happens when you put a clear coat on top of the graphite when you've left the graphite on. And just like where it's really light here, gets really glossy. And where the dark parts are would turn into this matte pattern that you can see really well from the side.
That looks cool.
Like that.
That looks like a face.
Yeah.
Doesn't it?
And you could actually work back on top of this with oil if you want. There's all kinds of fun stuff you can do with this stuff, and it's just all experimental. I saw somebody doing the graphite washes with oil, with acrylic, not acrylic, with alcohol, because the alcohol dries faster.
Oh yeah.
And it creates a slightly different kind of a bead.
Cool.
But these are just shop rags that are those
soft cotton
shop rags you get at like Costco or whatever. Mm-hmm.
Or Home Depot. You can, I throw those in the wash every so often to clean them up.
Mr. Clean Magic eraser sponges, those regular circular craft sponges, I get them and cut them into shapes.
Which is, for some reason, difficult to find sometimes.
Yeah. And then these are just like your regular floor cleaning sponges you might get at Walmart or something that
really porous
work just fine, you know, depending on what you want to do. And if it's wet and you try to polish it, all it does is make everything go a dull, flat gray. So it kind of removes any detail. So I usually have to let it dry for a while before that. I could probably use the hot air gun on this now, and it would dry okay. See, it still moves in there. You can see it moving.
Yeah.
So just be aware that it'll move. The wetter it is, the more it moves.
And if you have an idea, and then after you're done with this, when you hit it with the clear gloss, it'll just pop to back to
right.
black, right?
This looked much like this before I put the gloss on, and then the gloss, the clear, it's like a varnish. So of course the varnish deepens all the values.
Right.
So you can see that's still wet because it's so dark.
Well, there's a blob.
Yeah, I'll scrape that off today. I just want to dry it first. So if you move it when it's wet, it'll make a streak. So, yeah. So now, since that little blob is there still too, I would start kind of hitting it with these things and getting rid of it. You can see that it's still gonna get rid of some of the detail in there, but it can come back. And by the time I'm done with it, even before it's sealed, I can lay my hand on it and no graphite will come back up. Now I'm going to get a kneaded eraser and show you what it looks like when you pull up some of the light a bit. So I also got to find a clean spot on my hair. Right.
We will not be at WonderCon. Next place we're going to be is Monsterpalooza in Pasadena, California, and that is in April. And then at LuxCon, we won't be at San Diego this year because we're doing Monsterpalooza. There's a kneaded eraser.
So here's a kneaded eraser, and you can just drag it over the light parts if you want and start pulling details out. And you can see you can get pretty fine with it, however fine you want to make it.
No problem.
Right? Mm-hmm. And all of this, where I want it to be dark, that's where I'll work back into it with a regular pencil. So this is one of those abrasive erasers that are sharpened down to almost a nub now. So you can see that you can come in here and if you use it like you would a normal pencil and gently start to remove graphite, you can get a very, very subtle gradation in the whole thing.
Right, so...
None of this is quick, by the way. Everything I do takes a long time.
Yeah, so the one you did of the female piece, her sister's keeper.
Yeah, the one that
all that gradation of her body and everything is all just very slowly pulling it off and putting it back on with graphite, correct?
Right. Yep. And so I'm going to get another piece of that Mr. Clean Magic Eraser and show you another. So those are two erasers that I use, and I'm
you have not worked with colored graphite, correct?
Not yet. Not yet. That doesn't mean I won't.
Yeah, give him a chance. I'm sure he'll try it out.
All right. So this is what the Mr. Clean Magic Erasers look like when they come out of the box, and I just usually, cut them into shapes. Now, if you want to soften an area, you can take one of these dry without getting it wet, and just see how the smoke. That's the graphite it's pulling up, and I can actually pull up a lot of the dark stuff and just have the little bits of striation are starting to appear. The lines are coming out, and I can play for weeks in this stuff.
Yeah, I have to cut them off.
See, I mean, these look like the sutures of a skull already to me, But I mean, a lot of this stuff does look like that. But you can see there's details that are coming out of the dark areas of this. If you want to play with that, and you can keep or change whatever you want. Now, okay, that's very subtle. Very gentle.
It's not taking off much.
Right? And then you have an electric eraser. Right? That can go back to the pure white of the board, which looks like a luminous glow now, right?
Right. Yeah, people were asking how you got that.
And then I go back and I hit the edges of it, and I blend it into the rest of it with the abrasive eraser, and it gets a little muddy again like that. And then you have to touch it again. the kneaded eraser to bring it back up. So it's basically chasing the values you want, you know. But that's pretty much everything, except for maybe I could show you the steel wool too. Hold on. So this is
look, the camera is like
it's struggle. Yeah, this is, so they sell artist grade steel wool, which is really fine. I'm not sure how it differs from really fine steel wool that you get like at any hard
no,
place.
we determined that.
But what you can do is it'll give it a really nice textural quality.
Stop! Oh
See?
my God, that's cool.
You can see how it, and you can like work that into the whole piece if you want. You know, you can.
Someone said erasers do all the work.
Yeah, for this, mostly there's a lot of it that is erasers. But the thing is that if you want any real hard lines and stuff, or define edges, you have to go back and work that back into the piece with a soft pencil. Yeah, and I've been using 6B Caran Dash leads.
A lot.
They seem to actually adhere to the board better than almost any of the other leads that I have, and that's different than what I normally use on regular paper. Because normally I'll use either Tombow Monos or Mitsubishi Hayane on regular graphite paper. Regular.
This person's being very nice.
Oh yeah.
Texas Fun Face. Here are the free tips that they pay for. They never hear in class. You've never heard of an electric eraser? This is
a Sakura
special electric eraser.
You can get cheaper ones. You can get electric erasers from $5 to $10 online. This one costs a little more because it's really powerful. It's like around anywhere from $30 to $45. But most of them work. And I use the white eraser in it instead of the gray one that comes with it. It's more abrasive. So, but usually they come with two different kinds of erasers. One's white and one's gray.
Yeah, but you buy the white ones by the box.
But I buy the white ones by the box. Yeah. But yeah, most of this.
He has put transparent oils on top of one of these.
Yeah, that's what this is. This is the black.
Well, they were asking about color.
Oh, color. Well, that's
Maelstrom.
Yeah, Maelstrom has some of that. Yeah. And all it amounts to is, from what I can tell, the way you make the color work with the graphite is making sure that when you're done, you can varnish it in such a way as the surface is unified.
Right.
So if you go to put a good gloss varnish or a matte varnish over the whole thing at the end, as long as the surface looks unified, those two mediums work well together.
Yes.
You know.
Should try airbrushing color. You usually airbrush for matte meat for.
I use airbrush to apply Liquitex acrylic matte medium. I used to do airbrush for color and stuff when I used to do airbrush painting, but I haven't used it for this. There's a guy online, I think his name is Andrew Gonzalez, who does airbrush monochromatic, that uses subtle color, but he does airbrush monochromatic on claybord and then subtracts with erasers like I do for this. And his work is very elaborate and almost Baroque, and you'd probably like it if you like this kind of detail and larger pieces with color. He does apply it with an airbrush and then works back into it. Andrew Gonzalez is his name, I think.
Very cool.
So,
look, there's something. You see this much easier through the camera.
Yeah, you do. It's actually coming up better, more contrast. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But that's pretty much the way the technique works, and I can it's like playing chess. I can show you the moves in like 20 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes, and it'll take you a while to figure out how to make it work for you. It's
while.
Huh? Well, yeah.
It's almost been a year.
Yeah, I've been working with this technique for a year before I got it to a point where I feel like I can control it now. And even at that, it's like skiing. It's a controlled fall, right?
Yes.
So I control it, but follow the direction of the board too. So,
right.
But that's about it. That's about how it works. I mean, maybe we'll do another one where I'll draw into it with pencil. Okay. So I can show you the little bits of pieces that maybe don't occur to you just using that.
Right. Okay.
So.
Well, thank you guys for coming, and you're welcome. Everyone's saying thank you for the tips. Look,
oh, you're very welcome.
I'll show you. Here's his airbrush. What is this?
This is a Grec, and I use this for putting on like matte medium, right?
Right.
And
Not pure matte medium. No. Thin it out, right?
Yeah, this is when I want the piece to be matte, right? When I want it to be glossy, then I just use the spray acrylic clear coat.
Right.
Yeah. So.
There's your magnifying glasses. Because
because I go insane sometimes and have to look at things on a microscopic scale.
And the meat grinder for the sculpting.
That's for sculpting for clay. See, it's
that your head?
Yeah. I know it's all dirty, but that's okay.
There's the giant brush for...
Huh?
That's the giant brush you used on the big pieces,
Oh,
right?
yeah. Yeah. I use this to lay out big swooping areas of graphite, and it starts to look like calligraphy if you do it well. But then I never leave it, so the beauty goes away.
Right. All right.
But,
We will see you guys later.
yep.
I'll try to be more prepared or let you know beforehand when we're going to do a live video.
Definitely.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks for watching.